So New Zealand is holding its collective breath in the hope that no further COVID cases are found after an infected Australian's visit to Wellington plunged the capital into level 2 lockdown. For all the latest on this developing situation, joining us now is COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins. Minister, g'day, good morning. What's the very latest? Any results come in?
No extra results overnight. There was a good increase in testing yesterday, so we'll start to see the results of that coming through this morning. Still waiting on the genome sequence result from Australia. At this point, though, the Australian authorities, the advice from them is that they're treating it as the Delta variant and treating it as a linked case to their current cluster that they are dealing with, but don't have any confirmation of that at this point.
Right, okay, so but they're treating it as such because it is now so prevalent in that cluster.
That's right, and there is a suggestion that there could be a link between the place where the person works, the person who came to New Zealand works, and other positive cases. So hence that they are viewing it as most likely linked.
And what's your advice from all your officials and the experts in the field who've talked to you as the politician responsible for the department, as the health minister, as the COVID response minister? What is your advice of the likelihood that this thing has jumped around in Wellington and further afield in New Zealand?
Still too early to tell, and that's why we have these alert level restrictions in place in the Greater Wellington region. The fact that there were some locations of interest where there were quite high densities of people for quite a long period of time does increase the risk, and that's why we've done this extra precautionary measure of effectively spreading Wellington out, distancing Wellington, so that we decrease the risk of any onward transmission. So if we do pick up extra cases, as long as they are people who are isolating at home, so they know that they were in the location of interest, they've stayed home, they've got a test, they've waited for the test result to come back in. Even if we do see a few positive test results in that circumstance, then it's potentially still manageable. If we start to see a wide number of cases, then we may need to look at something further. But at this point, it's still very early days.
Yeah, it really is. So the crucial tests come in when? When is it likely that the testing results that really matter will come in?
Over the next sort of 48 to 72 hours, we will see hopefully a big increase in testing. We're standing up extra testing capacity today. When something like this happens, there's always a big queue for people needing to be tested, so we need to get those extra testing sites up and running so that we can meet the demand for testing. As those results come through over the next sort of 2 to 3 days, that'll give us a better indication of whether there is increased risk. Bearing in mind too that it's now been several days, so therefore if someone was infected over the weekend, the likelihood of picking it up increases with the length of time that passes between the exposure event and when they're tested.
And it has been several days, and I put it to you, Minister, where are the testing stations? Yes, you've got one on Taranaki Street, which is downtown CBD. You've got one there, but it's overrun. Why can we not put up more pop-up testing stations in areas that matter? Why can't we do it? What's wrong with us?
There will be more testing stations set up today. It takes a little bit of time to rally the staff. You've obviously got to pull people off their other duties in order to be able to do that. We don't have people standing around and waiting just in case. We need extra testing capability. So we will, there's work to roster on people to do that testing. You saw them surging up their capacity at the existing testing site yesterday, and including in other testing sites across the Wellington region, where they got an increase in demand.
I read reports that it was a shambles. Someone tried to make an appointment out at Cannons Creek. They were in the city. 20-odd k's away. You know the area.
Oh, look, but the reality is Wellington, as you will know, Duncan, people who are at Te Papa will live in Porirua and they will live in the Hutt Valley. They will be spread all throughout the region. So we have got extra testing capacity out in the suburbs.
So how many more testing stations are you putting in today?
Oh, there will be more today. I haven't had the confirmed list. I got a draft list last night. They were locking all that down last night. So we'll release that at some point later on this morning.
When did you first know about this Australian traveller?
About 8:45, I think, night before last. The contact tracing teams were kicking into gear there. They were assembling the relevant information late into the night. What was that? That must have been Tuesday night. Yeah. Tuesday night, and then through yesterday morning, we were releasing that information from sort of very early on Wednesday morning through to now, really.
Why didn't you hold a late night press conference on Tuesday night, like has been practiced in the past with yourself and Jacinda or Jacinda and Ashley Bloomfield? With the Auckland lockdowns, it was always, we were tuning in sort of 10 o'clock. We were involved in this stuff at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30. Why was this different?
Well, the reality is a case that you get notified of at 8:45, I don't think we've ever held a press conference after midnight to reveal the details of that. It takes several hours to actually get the to
Why
get
would
the
you
core
not?
information together. Well, not many people would hear it. Not many people would know about it. It takes a while to get the information together. There are two things at play here. One is in the middle of the night, some of the people you're trying to contact, bearing in mind you're talking about members of the public, some of the people you're trying to contact will be asleep and they won't be answering their phones. And there's also the Trans-Tasman gap as well. So, we have to deal with that too. There's actually a time difference between New Zealand and New South Wales, which we also have to account for.
Yeah, see, I don't buy this whole thing. Well, who would watch it? Or who would listen? People tune into this stuff. They get the alerts. They tune in, and that's why you use TV and that's why you use radio. That's why in national emergencies and pandemics, that's why the media is used, and that's why you do those press conferences. And people wake up to it. They do. And I think you're entirely on the wrong track by saying, "Oh, people wouldn't tune in." No way. They're absolutely tuning into this stuff.
But you've also got to know what you're talking about. So if we held a press conference at midnight, most of the answers to the questions will be a don't know. So we do get notified of cases from time to time. In many cases, once we get further information, there actually isn't an increased risk to the public from those cases once we start that contact tracing process. So it is important that we get that basic information to answer the immediate questions that come up.
Yeah, but there's some basic messaging.
Where's the person been? Is there an increased risk?
Yeah, sure. But there's some basic messaging. Hey, we have a case here.
New Zealand.
We have a case here. It was at Wellington Airport. There's an Aussie here at the weekend with COVID. Most likely visited Te Papa. You knew that. And so there's thousands of people there for a start. Maybe you could tell people they might like to stay at home, remind them of masks. There are 5 or 6 things you could easily generically do before midnight on Tuesday.
Look, within 12 hours of this case being notified to us, all of that information was out there and was public. Bearing in mind that that was an overnight period, I actually think the team did very well to get that information out there.
Okay. When it comes to this case, and you've already answered the question around what your advice is, do you still stick by your press release on the Tuesday night, which said low risk? That was just the bubble closing. It's still a low risk to New Zealand. Do you still use the term low risk?
Yes, but there's a reason that we've paused the bubble with New South Wales, and that is that while it's low risk, there are some uncertainties there. So we're seeing extra cases popping up in New South Wales that aren't clearly linked to each other. Up until day before yesterday, up until Tuesday, all of the cases were linked, and they were people who were isolating. We're now seeing extra cases popping up in the community where that link is not immediately obvious. The contact tracers may be able to, in Australia, may be able to identify those links, but they need some time to do that. And while they're doing that, there's increased risk to New Zealand. That's why we've put that pause in place. Okay,
and just finally, before we go, because vaccinations are really important now, aren't they, given the times that we're living in, has our vaccination program gone slower than you would have liked? I just want to get this on record.
Look, if we could have got more vaccines into the country faster, then yes, of course, we could have gone faster. But ultimately, supply has been the thing that's constrained that. The vaccine campaign has gone as fast as it can, given the availability of vaccines in New Zealand. And actually, the feedback we've had from people is that
why were we bottom of the queue when it came to supply? Well, why weren't we considered important enough to flick us a few more?
No, I reject that we were the bottom of the queue. Actually, we've done quite well in making sure that we've got access to vaccines relative to other countries. If you look at our strategy was to buy 4 different vaccines. We changed our strategy in January to focus in on one vaccine. When we ordered the extra doses of that vaccine, Pfizer were very clear to us, you can have the extra doses, but you won't be able to get them until the second half of the year. We made that decision knowing that we were buying one of the best vaccines on the market. When we bought 4 vaccines, we didn't know at that point which ones were going to be the ones that would turn out to be effective and which wouldn't, and we didn't know all the information. So we balanced our portfolio, if you like. We hedged our bets. We actually ended up with one of the best vaccines on the market. New Zealand, by the end of the year, will be very, very well protected from that. I think it's a vaccine that was worth waiting for.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Chris Hipkins, COVID-19 Response Minister, appreciate your time.